Yeah, it's me again. It's the 26th still. It's still Monday night. It's almost quite at 8 o'clock at night Pacific Standard Time. I was going over some memories once more. I was also going through lamentations of what I could have been, what I should have been, what I've done, and what I could have done and didn't do. It's amazing how certain things or shows or whatever media that you're getting yourself exposed to will bring out whatever's inside of you to experience, to have flashbacks, to think about the kind of choices and courses you've made. And when I started doing my audio logs, it seems like I'm getting more and more stuff dug out every day. Things I should have done, things I could have done, didn't do. One of my logs I was trying to talk about is concerning about personal experiences of creativity. Going through schools, growing up from kindergarten, then you got the elementary, grades 1 through 6, at least during my time. And then you had junior high from 9 through, 7 through 9 actually. Losing track of memory right now, that's for sure. And then there was high school from 10 to 12, and after that, it's the world of college. But during that time, going through school, I never was encouraged in doing something or following up a dream as much, even though I may have had pushings left and right concerning about my education level to where it should have been. It wasn't. I wasn't exactly the most cooperative student growing up as a kid. I was the one stuck with comic books and science fiction and science going through the damn head. Not understanding how to put things into context or write them out in stories and stuff. The more I read as a young kid of different stories, of different adventures and how people have gone through things, the more I admired those writers because they knew how to craft words into sentences, paragraphs, pages, stories. I fell in love with them. I fell in love with books. I fell in love with hardcovers and soft covers. I looked at them as adventure. I looked at them as escape. I looked at them as other worlds and not dealing with the life I had. It wasn't easy because I still had to deal with life and still had to deal with a mother and I still had to deal with school teachers and grades, pressure. But where was the encouragement needed when you were trying to pursue a goal or trying to find that goal? In school, you're given the information by rote, but where was the motivation? Especially when you're dealing with a public education at this point over here. They wanted to make sure that you know how to write well. They want to make sure that you know your numbers, and they want to make sure if you do a little bit of history at this point over here, or reading, writing, arithmetic, they call it. I have to mention a little bit about political science, maybe a little bit about science if you're understanding about that. And if you're really good, or actually really blessed about it, you could have extracurricular activity, see sports if you're good at that. Or maybe mechanics, building something, fixing something. Computer science, programming computers when they were coming out during that time. I knew how to be a gamer, but I never knew how to program a computer. At least not very well anyway. The programs they had out there were DOS, MS-DOS, and also Apple. Apple didn't make sense to me. I looked at them like, huh? And then MS-DOS was logical, but I really didn't know how to really think like a programmer during that time. I knew how to write or create a story, at least I thought I did. I barely passed a computer class, actually 2 of them, in high school. I wasn't encouraged enough in high school, though. Not even junior high. I mean, junior high, they gave you all the necessities on how to barely write well enough. How to construct sentences, how to construct paragraphs and do essays. Try to do a compare and contrast, try to do a book report on a book. Didn't matter what kind of book. Favorite book, assigned book. You had to do a book report. Basically, you're being a critic. Critic for a book. There was no creativity in the thing. It was only like if your brain was actually using or being used properly in their way of thinking. If you were lucky enough in high school, you actually found a creative writing lab somewhere and able to get a hold of a group of students and a teacher who knew what the hell they were doing. I was barely blessed in that situation, but I also learned how to appreciate literature. I may not have gotten through Shakespeare or Macbeth or anything else like that. I knew how to appreciate the story of the Odyssey and the Iliad because I had an English lit teacher who was teaching us about that one. And, let's see, Don Quixote. But when it came down for creative writing, the only thing she would be eligible for that one is how to do journalism, how to pursue the truth. Mrs. Farmer, the old broad. God bless her, God rest her soul. Tough old lady, hell of a teacher for an English teacher. Back at John F. Kennedy High School in Granada Hills, California. Between the time of 1981 and 1985. I had 2 classes with her, Journalism 101, beginnings of it, and we had classes of English literature, which I was mentioning about the others. But creative writing? I was in another English class at one time, just first semester of science fiction. To appreciate science fiction more and more, to understand the complexities of it. She was also a science teacher as well. She was teaching me a little bit about oceanography. Well, that was something that was a lot better than taking biology class, but I even took that one too. But that was the only English classes I took and I was qualified for, and if there was any other creative writing classes during that time, screw it. The Kennedy High School of Los Angeles Unified School District didn't even have those kind of things going on. I wish I had. Because it would have made me more appreciative of how to write stories. Even when I was taking the classes and other courses, I was trying to do science fiction myself. I was trying to write stories, but the problem is when you're trying to write stories, you really didn't have the encouragement from instructors because they wanted you to follow a format, but the problem is they didn't teach it enough on the format. They didn't. They didn't teach you that besides having a plot, there's also a theme, characterizations, particular viewpoints, settings, tense. What was the theme of it? What was the goal of the hero? What was a factor driving the hero or heroine? Male or female hero, since we're doing the political correctness at this point over here, the hero could be male and female, or both, or whatever. But the hero of the story, we used to call them heroines. And not relating to the drugs either, because that's what we were taught a long time ago, until the PC came in, the political correctness. How to drive a writer crazy, I swear to God. We couldn't see the characters lively enough. We could try seeing them. You know, if we watched enough television, maybe it would have given us something to work with, but you'd only deal with the wooden characters that you see on there. And if you happen to see movies, and read books, you're trying to get a basis somewhere in your forming you're forming gray cells during that time, the gray mass called a brain at one time. You're trying to make characters left and right and bringing them to life and trying to show them what kind of humanity and depth of humanity they actually had. The problem is when you're a young student at the point of where you may be brilliant enough to be technically creative to a point, but do you have enough information on how to be a human or show human-like qualities? Did you read enough stories to understand the complexity of a character, what they go through, what they feel, what they think, what they say, how they acted, what decisions they had to make, what morals were driving them, what lines would they cross, what lines would they not cross, what would they be gaining, what would they not be gaining at this point over here? I participated in Dungeons and Dragons areas to learn how to create characters. But how to bring them alive was the hardest damn thing because I didn't really get that information through the schools. And if I did, it didn't sink into my head at that time. And there was no motivation at the point. I mean, there was no positive motivation saying, stay after school, we'll help you work with this damn thing. No, give you the homework and go out. That was the school system for you. And then when you get into college, now college should be looking at the technical aspects of your writing at this point over here, whether or not if you could actually draft an essay correctly enough, without any punctuations or problems like that, you get into the higher ones. But if you actually had a hell of a lot of mistakes, it put you through the bargain basement. That was my situation. I went through the bargain basement because my skills weren't up to speed. I barely passed it through high school English, and then when I got into college, I had to start from scratch all over again in college. Almost. I had to do writings a lot. I had to do essays. I had to do journals. I had to do expository writing. I never understood what the hell that damn shit was in the first place. I understand what compare and contrast was. So I was taught that all the time. How to do a book report. But there are certain type of essays that we're talking about at this point over here. When you get a thesis statement of your topic, and then you've got to list out where your items in the essay is going to be. And then in those sections, you got to talk about them at length. And are they in a sequence, and are they making sense relating from one section to another section to another section, so you can understand the flow of thought. So you get down to the conclusion, which kind of reverberates everything else. And that's it. And of course, you had to work cited. Wasn't taught to me in school. But in college, I had to learn that the hard way. A long time ago. I had to make sure that the quotations were right, and I was still mechanically screwed up on that one. But I managed to barely pass it and continue on. And then I studied, instead of I should have done American literature at that point, or creative writing, I'd take English literature, because I wanted to read something different. I wanted to understand something different. I wanted to understand the flow of poetry or English writing at that point. Because during that time, I was watching English shows and seeing how the English were creating their styles. Or actually, how Americans stole their styles and tried to make it our own version of it. And the thing of this, it drove me nuts, because I'm learning something about English literature, and I should have been reading more about American literature or how to do creative writing. I wanted to write for a living. I wanted to be a writer like Asimov, Bradbury, Terry Brooks, Roddenberry. I mean, these guys are my heroes, my champions at this point. Even Arthur C. Clarke. And the problem is, I didn't know how to write like that. I had to write little stories here and there. As a teenager, when I was working with my mother in the summertime on her job as a clerk, there was a writer friend of hers who was also working at the same company. a script writer. He's been in the business for a long while, Jed Nussel, God rest his soul. And he looked at some of my work, and he was like, oh, when you hear and see something like that as a young kid, it's like, take your heart out, rip the damn thing out, and put the pieces back together in your heart, actually in your body, but all broken up. I felt like I couldn't write because I didn't either, well, I probably had talent, but I didn't have the technique. Didn't hear, didn't listen, didn't see the technique. And if I had seen the technique, maybe I would have copied it. If somebody actually had taught the technique to me, maybe I would have done a hell of a lot better when I was a young kid. But I lost a lot of confidence in that. And nobody ever gave me the confidence necessary to go forward or even help coach me as a young person. And because of that, I lost out on a lot of opportunities to really go for a goal like that. And I still want to. Well, the thing is, I'm still feeling the same damn fear as the kid did a long time ago, feeling I'm no damn good. So whatever works I've got right now is in it. I don't think anybody else would like to see the damn shit in the first place. But if I actually did, I'd still like to throw it at people who have been in the business longer than I have, and then maybe, just help me out a little bit, you know. Give me some constructive critique without tearing my ass apart left and right. And if I'm actually mature enough to understand the mechanisms that need to be done in order to get them fixed, to get the stories out. When you have passion, you need to feel you have a support system and people to believe in you. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. Unless you're going to be that motivated enough and saying to hell with everything and hell with everybody, and you kick your own ass and keep going forward. I didn't do that. I wish I had. But while I was in college back in the 80s, I did go into science fiction conventions, and I did go and join up with a couple of sci-fi clubs. There I tried to write. Just writing off the top of my head, whatever came up. Sometimes you get published, and other times it's like, what the hell are you doing? I tried to write stories concerning about situations I put a character through in regards to another character he's trying to deal with. Before I knew it, I get called up by the leader of the group and say, we're going to lobotomize your character. I said, fuck you. I had thrown those damn good stories away. I felt like my own confidence got shot to hell at that point. Had to learn the licks of being a writer because you're going to be taking a lot of negative criticisms. It's not all peaches and cream. You just have to get your licks going. I didn't understand it at the time. Maturing years later, I understand it now more than ever. But even then, I waited a couple of decades more before I got back into it again and saying, no, it's enough of this shit. Let's see if I can do something. So, in understanding what things I needed to take care of, I just started writing again. And I wrote. Now, the thing is, I still need to have help in the damn thing. I'm 54 years old, and I still need to have help in the damn thing. I mean, constructive criticism is one thing. But a negative hatch job saying you have nothing, you've got shit at this point over here really doesn't help much, I tell you. If they happen to say, well, if you got something over here, but you need to follow these kind of certain guidelines and principles, and I kept learning. In writing, there are no rules. Formats, but there are no rules. So, I'm hoping maybe this time. I mean, I've been a disappointment to a hell of a lot of people and to myself. I felt like I was not able to accomplish anything in my life. And after seeing a hell of a lot of creative work bypass me left and right, I feel like I've been stuck in neutral too damn long. I guess maybe my gears are too damn rusted and they need oiling. And every time I keep taking an English class at this point over here, I wanted to make sure I prove myself as a writer of sorts, that I understand what the topic is, and I understand that there's a beginning, there's a middle, and there's an end. There's a way of doing things. But I'm also a storyteller. I'm a storyteller. And I have to tell the matter in a way that I can tell people in a format I'm familiar with. And in a way that maybe people can understand. I mean, I know colleges are structured. Some professors understand structure is better than creativity, and it's kind of hard to find that. It freaks the professors out on some occasions when I don't do the structure type and I do a creative approach. Maybe I don't get the A's as much, but I know my talent is still there and I still got to work on it. When I was watching something this evening, I was seeing how things used to be as a teenager and how I never had those kind of things as a teenager. I never had dances except for one prom dance. Helen Charles, God be with her. The only friend of mine I'd be able to take over to a prom, and she was a couple of years older than I was. She had been out of high school. But she was more willing to deal with me. But if there was any high school functions, I wasn't going to them because I felt like I was a nerd. I was worthless as hell. I didn't have a confidence of a kid. I was one of those kind of geek boys out there. I was into my own little things, and unfortunately, I wish I was more into what other teenagers were during that time. And I wasn't. I didn't put myself in those situations. I didn't have the encouragement as I should have had. I hung out with other geeks and nerds that felt the same damn awkward way. Outcasts of sorts. And I even felt like an outcast from the outcast sometimes. Because of my own damn insecurities. It's kind of hard to talk about this thing to people because do people want to know about this kind of crap? I don't give a shit because I know somebody out there is probably going through the same damn way. I figure every teenager, there's got to be one or two people out there who feels the same damn way, awkward as hell. They know their own strengths, but they also know they have too many weaknesses and not enough encouragement. They needed a strong support system of sorts that they can't get at a home. They'll probably find it with other people they call friends or family at that point. But the thing is, it is important to have some kind of strong support system, even if it is not with your own biologic bloodline or whatever family that you have there. It's important that you actually have a family that actually cares about you one way or another. It actually gives you a little bit of encouragement to get through stuff. And I'll walk you through it. Even if you guys are feeling like you're totally inadequate and the world's against you. It's easy enough to be that way. It's easy enough to feel that way. I know. Things I was good enough was playing video games. I didn't know how to program the damn computers much. And I was learning how to plug the keyboards in like crazy. You know, how to plug in information on the keyboard, but just not programming the damn thing. Operating, okay, no problem. But you know, if I can play a joystick, no problem. I can go into an arcade and plug in a few $100 if I had to. I'd spend hours and hours just getting carpal tunnel. or tendonitis. But they gave me a piece of paper and a pencil during that time, and I would try to write something. It may not be the greatest thing, but I'd still be able to write something. Stick a book in my hand and you'll never see me for a while. I love the written word sometimes. I get older, the eyes are not so good. Podcasts are a little bit better. So is YouTube. But I can't give up on the writing because I know the characters in me are still waiting to speak more and more volumes before I pass on. I still need to get back into it again. I don't know what's holding me back. Maybe a hell of a lot of crap and I'm using them as a hell of a crutch. But it can't stop me at this point. I suppose it can't stop you either. You got the passion. Even at an older age, if you're still able to do it, do it. And the hell with anybody else says about it. If you feel like you can do it, don't hesitate. Because you lose time when you do. I know that too damn well.